Hi friends, today we're going to do my less than 10-minute writing exercise that focuses on sentence structure. We're going to use a process called diagramming that will allow us to take any sentence and break it apart into its component parts so we can better understand how it's composed. We'll first start off with some really simple sentences so you can understand the process of diagramming, and then later I'll have the actual 3 sentences I'm going to present for us to play around with, and you can see how you can use diagramming to analyze sentences, to either help you correct your own sentences, or if you have a favorite author or favorite book, you can analyze their sentences. Anyway, let's get started. So right now I have 4 very simple sentences. You can't get any simpler than this. You have a noun and a verb. And what you do with diagramming is, and what you should do with any sentence in diagramming is first look for the noun and the verb. So in the case of John walked, we know John is the noun and walked is the verb. So to diagram the sentence, we would do John walked. And then we put a divider and a baseline to separate them. So we know that on the left is our noun and on the right is our verb. Okay, let's just go through the rest of these quickly because they're pretty simple. Jill ran. You just sort of divide it so you can see the 2 component parts. And of course, this will branch out as you get more and more complex sentences. And you'll see how this works as we get through the video. Anyway, Steve sang. Divider, baseline. Same thing with Michael wrote. Divider and baseline. And what you could notice from these 4 examples, I used all past tense verbs. Wrote, sang, ran, walked. Just so they're all consistent. But you could use present tense or whatever as you're playing around with this. And then when you examine other people's sentences, you'll know right away if it's past tense or present tense. Also periods at the end of these to make them formal sentences. All right, let's move on. Okay, so now we have essentially the same 3-4 sentences, but I've added to them. So now we'll see how we can break these down using diagramming. So let's first find the noun. In this first sentence, the noun we know is John, and we know the verb is walked from the previous 4 examples. So let's write those down. John walked. Okay. Divider and a baseline. But now we've got to town. So what happens in diagramming, you have to branch off from the verb, and the to goes here. To is a preposition. And when you think of prepositions, if you hack off the pre and you just say position, it'll let you know right away it's where in position, to town, or whatever. It's just kind of a little trick you can do. But anyway, let's go. So this is the preposition to, and where you're going to the object, it would be town. So town would go down here, just like that. All right, now let's move on to the next one. Our noun is Jill, and remember from the last one, ran is the verb. So we have Jill, and then ran. Oh, Sorry about that. And then go like that. You'll notice I'll put a little more space on both sides of these words because as these sentences become more and more complex, we're going to need more space to put in the different branches that'll go underneath here. So Jill ran, and we've got in the rain. We know in is a preposition, so that would go down here, in. And then we've got where did she run? Or she ran in the rain. And then the is can go down here, sorry. And that's how that works. Now we'll go on to the next one and we'll do Steve, this one's more interesting, sang. And in this case, song is a direct object. So you would put song over here. And then you'd put a divider and another divider and then your baseline again. And we use a right here as a functioning word for song. Sorry, writing is a little not that great. All right, let's move on to the next one. Michael wrote Sue a letter. So we go Michael. And then we know wrote from the previous very simple sentences was the verb. So we go wrote. And in this case, there is a direct object, letter. So in this case would be, we put letter here. And then put our dividers in and our baseline. And we know a letter, that functional word, or in this case, letter A would go there. And then wrote would go because the verb goes right here. So we would say Sue Sue is the indirect object. Sue would go down here, just like that. All right, let's move on to our first three more complex sentences. So you got to get the idea that the main focus of this exercise when you get very complex sentences is to, if you learn nothing else, is to focus on what is the subject and what is the verb. A lot of the other stuff, you have adjectives helping describe different things. You have conjunctions, words like but or and to add to the sentence. But the main focus, if you can stay focused on what's the noun and what's the verb, you'll be in good shape. All right, let's move on to our first more complex sentence. Okay, now we've got some modern writers still write longhand with pen and paper. Okay, let's see. What do you think our noun is? Our noun is writers. And what do you think our verb is? Write. And in this case, we have a direct object as well, and that is longhand. So let's write this, writers. And I'm going to have some space here because there's other words that we have to consider. Write, and then put longhand. And put our baseline here again, and our dividers. So let's get started with writers. We have two adjectives here going on. We can say some, and modern. Okay, some modern writers. And then we have still right. And still would be an adjective as well, so you just put still here. Some modern writers still write. And then for longhand, we've got with pen and paper. So we have the preposition with, that would go down here. And then we have these indirect objects. In this case, there's two. We've got pen and paper. We've got a conjunction here to deal with. So we split this off like this. And we put pen up here. And then we put paper down here. And then how do we deal with a conjunction? And when you deal with conjunctions and or whatever, you just put dotted lines and then you put and here. All right. So that would be the diagram for this sentence. Not too bad, but let's move on to the next one and see how that works out. Okay. Okay. Many barns in Pennsylvania still bear apotropaic hex signs. Okay. Apotropaic in my vocabulary videos means to ward off evil. And most of these barns in Pennsylvania have these kind of ornate signs on there. And they're very decorative. And it's been like an old practice to put these signs on your barns to ward off evil or witches or whatever. Anyway, let's diagram this sentence and let's start with what is the subject of this sentence? Many barns in Pennsylvania. I would say barns. What is the verb? Many barns in Pennsylvania still bear. Okay, I would say bear is the verb. What about a direct object? I would say signs, because many of these barns, they bear these types of signs. So let's put barns here. Let's put bear here. That's our verb. And let's put signs here. Draw our little baseline. So we have that. And our little dividers. All right. So now we know we've got many barns. What is many? Many is an adjective. So let's put many down here. And then we have in Pennsylvania. So in is a preposition. In. And then the indirect object would be Pennsylvania. Then we have still bear, and still is an adjective. So we just do the still right here, okay? Still is an adjective. Many barns in Pennsylvania still bear. All right, and now we've got signs. Signs is our direct object, but you have apotropaic and hex signs. These two are describing the types of signs. So they're both adjectives. So they branch off here. P. And hex. See how that works out? Many barns in Pennsylvania still bear apotropaic hex signs. All right. And now for the last one, let's take a look and see what we have here. We have they moved from the city to a quiet hamlet in the countryside. Sounds nice, especially if you're an older person. Okay, what is our subject here? I think that's pretty apparent, they. And how about the verb? The verb is pretty close to the beginning of the sentence. They moved, right? Okay, so that's pretty easy. But then you have all this other stuff happening. And we know just from the previous things, from, we can already deduce that from is a preposition. So because we have so much of this extra part of the sentence, I'm going to start it over here. They. It's something, we don't have other words around they and moved, so I can probably be safe to put moved over here without spreading it too much. Spreading it out way down there because I don't need to. All right. So then we said from is a preposition. And the object that it's referring to is city. And the, be off of here, the city. But then we also have to, and here you have another preposition. So, to. And then where to? A quiet hamlet in the countryside. So we have, it's to this hamlet. So let's do hamlet. And what type of hamlet? It's a quiet hamlet. Quiet is an adjective. And then we also, now we have in, and we know in is a preposition, so that goes right here. In. And what is in referring to? The countryside. Countryside. So we do and put the down here. There you go. They moved from the city to, oh, I didn't put a down here, sorry. A would be here. A quiet hamlet in the countryside. And that's how you would diagram this particular sentence. As you can see, this can get really complicated, but it still allows you to break down all of these elements so you understand how this sentence was composed. And it's just fun to take your, a favorite book or whatever and just open it up anywhere and just kind of play around with these sentences and see if you can diagram them. If you enjoyed this writing exercise, please like and subscribe. Thank you so much for watching, and I hope you have a wonderful rest of your day, and happy writing.